Hello, everybody, and welcome to coverage of our third quarterfinals of the Spring Fling Top 8. I'm Michael Hoyp. I'm joined in the booth today by Jared Doucette. How's it going, Jared?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very good, and I'm excited to watch this match. We have a classic of archetypes, I guess, but both of the players have made some slight adjustments to these typical archetypes. So I'm interested to see if that will change how things play out. But we also have some pretty interesting names here too. So we have Will Hirst is playing a Sligh deck, and then we have Brian Selden, former world champion, is playing Landstill. So world championship was not enough. He's trying to take a Spring Fling title and add that to his resume. So
It would be a nice feather in his cap, I'm
yeah,
sure.
so crowning
Right up there
achievement.
with his big trophy. I'm
Yeah.
sure that I don't even know if he probably still has. We'll have to ask him later.
All right, let's learn a little bit about the players and then their decks, and then we'll talk about the decks and the matchup, and then we'll jump into the match. So first, we have Will Hurst out of Madison, Wisconsin, someone that I know pretty well since he's local to me, and he has been in a lot of top eights lately. Pretty much, it seems like at least every other month, and sometimes multiple months in a row, he is in the top tables of our tournaments. He went 8-0 in the Swiss and took the second seed, so he's playing a Sligh list, which kind of is what he started in pre-modern, and he's ventured out into different decks. A lot of mono blue he's played, but he's kind of went back to Sligh and had a lot of success with it. He says it's
Yeah.
favorite. Oh, go ahead.
No, I mean it's a classic, obviously, and other than his affinity for weird looking new border cards, I think it's a pretty classic list. I know there's some changes that we can talk about later, but
Yep.
it's a good one.
Yep. So he says decks that he's favored is the normal Sligh matchups, which I guess I would say Sligh preys on kind of like dirtly decks, the decks that like aren't
Yeah.
really focused, and it really can punish that because the red can be very punishing to that strategy where you just kill him
hmm
quickly. But he's made some adjustments. He said his sideboard helps against Parfait and Stifle Knot, which for a while those were the top two decks, and that's pretty much what you would expect to see the top tables of any pre-modern tournament. So
Yep.
if that is his strategy, then he kind of nailed the meta probably, and that could be part of the reason for his success. He says his
Yeah.
list struggles against fast combo or decks that can gain life. So
I mean, that's pretty much classic Sly problems, right? It's the deck that's somehow faster than it and the one that just gains a ton of life. I mean,
yep,
anything that's just going to try to take a long time to try to win, it's not going to it's going to run all over.
yep.
But
And he's been real impressed with his sideboard crash. So the ways to destroy artifacts, he's been impressed with. And a little bit
interesting.
about Will and his deck. He said he loved Flint's take on the deck, which is kind of what he based his off. With the current meta, added one more Sulfuric Vortex and used Goblin Cadets, but those might be wrong. I'll note, I'll plug his podcast, the I've Got Questions podcast. He just had Flint on, and
Yeah.
they went kind of a deep dive on this deck, and both shared their thoughts. And if you want some insight of Will's approach, which might explain like his card choices or whatnot, that is a really good resource for anyone.
Yeah, I just started listening to it. I haven't finished it yet, but it seems to be pretty good so far.
Yep, he says, I think Price of Progress is posed for to return, and also Crash versus Overload is a good debate to have. Those are both topics I think that they touch on in the podcast. So,
hmm
any exciting moments? He said the ability to play under land tax is something fine to see with this deck. And so, also being able to Ball Lightning and then Reckless Abandon is about as sexy as it can be. So,
I mean, it takes 4 mana, but but it is possible.
sure. His favorite hobbies outside of Magic, he says fatherhood, podcasting, as I mentioned before, working at an awesome card shop. That would be Misty Mountain Games. He's recently started working there. So, and why should people root for you? He says, I think I'm a likable guy, and we need to keep progressing Sly with the times. I guess I more agree with that former than the latter there. I don't know how much we need to progress Sly, but I'll take his word
No,
for it.
it doesn't need to change much. And people these are a couple cards different than your typical Sly list, but it's still the red deck wins classic. This isn't some crazy change, but there are some tweaks for sure.
All right. Now looking at Brian Selden, so he said he's in the greater Boston area, so he's over in your neck of the woods. So we got
Yeah,
our
he's local to us.
hometown heroes for each of us. He
Yep.
finished with a 6-2 record and took the seventh seed. So uh, a couple losses that he had during the tournament, but he was able to squeak into the top eight. he likes his list against most matchups, and that's pretty typical with the blue white decks, that they're pretty good across the board, and especially when it can leverage its card advantage is when it really shines. Struggles against Stasis, specifically Black Vice. I think he struggled against, which makes sense.
Sure.
And he's had some trouble with the green white threshold decks.
Interesting.
He's been really impressed with the null, and he thinks there might be more copies are needed in the sideboard.
Yeah, and null's awesome.
Yeah. And a few more details. He said he wanted to work on his gameplay with a control deck. I know a lot of people were questioning why he wasn't playing a survival deck, which is something that he took to his World's Championship. But he's looking to play more control decks right now. Mostly stock, but cut down 2 standstills and added 4 spikes and a meddling mage to the sideboard. And
yeah, I think the standstills are definitely, like, it's kind of interesting to only see 2 of those.
I mean, it's certainly a good card in certain spots, but then there's also times where standstill can kind of backfire in certain situations.
Yeah.
So
no, it's something situational. Yeah, if you're ahead on board, it's amazing. If you're behind, like, it's terrible.
Yep.
So, it's one of those things.
For changes, he's still not sure on 4 spike, and he hasn't attacked yet with Faerie Conclave, so he's maybe hasn't been as impressed with that. Forbid earns its spot in the deck, and Humility without Enlightened Tutor is questionable, he says. For exciting moments, he said, I annulled a turn 2 Thran Dynamo after his opponent sacked their City of Traders after they played a second land. So we got a lot of value out of that annul, which he had already highlighted as pretty good.
That's a bad beat.
Yep. For his favorite hobbies, he says, I have a family of 5, work and at a startup company, and magic is the only hobby he has time for.
Does that mean he has 5 kids, or is it total of 5?
I think total of 5. That's how I interpreted it.
Okay, so 3.
We could clarify.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Why should people...
5 kids is a lot.
Yes. Why should people root for you? He said, honestly, they probably shouldn't. Watching a control deck win is like watching paint dry. But I definitely think there will be some fans for Ryan here. So I think he's in a better shape maybe than he thinks.
Right.
But let's jump down to the decks. Let's look at what our players have. So I have the Sligh list up. So I guess people are probably pretty familiar with the Sligh archetype, very aggressive red deck. This list is based off of Flint Espel's deck that he played in a recent monthly that he won with. It is very focused on 1-drops and keeping the mana count low. Part of that is to try and improve your matchup against Parfait and not to trigger land tax. Another topic that they address in the podcast. And a couple of copies of Reckless Abandon, and there's more aggressive 1-drops with he's playing Goblin Cadets instead of Goblin Patrol. What do you want to talk about this deck real quick?
I mean, I think I have no problem cutting down on, like, the ball lightnings, honestly. I think Sulfuric Vortex is really important in this deck because I think it's an inevitability, and and shutting off the life gain is enormous. But I just, I'm not sure if Cadets versus Patrol, what's better. I like 1-drops, don't get me wrong, but I like that the curve is very low. I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting, little take. I like 20 lands, and I think with 20 lands and 3, I understand, like, with the originals, like more classic Sligh list has 4 ball lightnings, 4 sulfur and 2 Sulfuric Vortex main usually, and that can get kind of like a little crowded at the 3-drop. I agree, like, especially with only 20 lands, like it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to hit. So I can hear the complaints there.
Mm-hmm.
I think Reckless Abandon is kind of tough because it's like it's situational. It is 1 mana 4 damage, which is huge, and especially when you want to get rid of a creature, especially for, like, in the case of Oath. So I understand that, but I think overall, I think the cards need to be individually powerful and always good by themselves, and not need another card, because that's that's not really what Sligh tries to do, is set things up together. It needs every card needs to be able to do its own thing. That's my only opinion of it.
All right. Let's move on to Brian's deck. So here we have the blue-white archetype. Again, this is probably something that people are pretty familiar with. It's a classic take of the blue-white. The differences here, I'll note a copy of Rout, and that's an interesting card. The ability to cast Wrath of God at instant speed, even if it is a little bit pricey, could be interesting. Not particularly in this matchup, but in general.
I need 7 mana to do that.
Yeah, maybe in certain matchups, I might see if that is if you're able to leverage that in some ways. And then 4 spike, so a cheap early interaction, which could be beneficial in this matchup if it shows up at the right time. But then also it's a card that is pretty easily to play around, and there are less copies of Standstill, which I think in this matchup is not a problem because actually the red deck does a pretty good job of waiting under a Standstill to build up a bunch of burn spells and then deploy them in one turn. So
Agreed.
don't think he's going to get hurt or be really missing the other copies of Standstill too much.
Right.
Is there anything you want to touch on for this list, or are you ready to jump down?
Let's do it.
All right. If you want to let our players know that they can begin. Okay, so we have Will on the left and then Brian on the right.
Will's on the play, right?
Yes, Will is the higher seed, so he gets the choice. We are doing a best of 3 tonight, so they will only be playing a maximum of 3 games here. So
okay,
and it could be a quick one anytime you have the Sligh deck. Games might not be that long, so we'll see what we have in store.
What kind of signal is Will setting with that cigar cutter just ready to go? Is he just ready to like cut some heads off? Like, what is that?
I didn't even notice that. I looked at it. It looked like a giant, oversized, like pop tab from soda.
Well, Will's made his first play mistake. He put his lands in front. So, thank you. You corrected it. There we go. Much better.
So.
All right, and we got Island Go from Brian. And Pup's doing what Pup does. And I think this is like exactly how Will wants to start this, right?
Yeah. The repeatable source of damage that Brian's going to have to spend resources to get rid of is really ideal. And any chip damage you can get in with the Jackal Pup just makes that burning out the opponent a lot much easier. So
yeah, I mean, honestly, Brian's just, oh my God, he's so far behind. You know, like, how does he come back? Like, there's no, like, he doesn't have, like, Pyroclasm right now, you know, to get these off the board. You know, and Wrath seems so far away. As if Will has any gas left, you know, as long as he doesn't have, like, just rip lands, it could be tough. Ooh, a force spec for the second one. All right.
Okay.
We saw something. I guess that kind of gains 2 to 3 life, right?
Yeah,
it's gonna those attacks are gonna get in. The sack's gonna matter. Like,
yeah, it might even. I mean, depending on how long before the creatures get answered, that actually would save him a lot of life. So,
absolutely,
still not necessarily in a position that I would envy if I were Brian, but definitely nice to get some value out of Force Spike.
Definitely. And the Mistress Factory is going to be a good blocker. I mean, I don't think it's typically long for this world. And even now, like, I think it's a risky block to try to block this Fanatic, you know? Even though the damage doesn't stack, it's just, there's too many burn spells that, you know, Will could have to kill it, and then you just lose your mana. Oh, Impulse. Okay. Nothing main phase for... Oh, wait, he's going to respond. Okay, no, we're resolving Impulse. But nothing. So not a third land drop. So no Ball Lightning, no Sulfuric Vortex, no other creatures to play. So that's a handful of burn spells. I think Will probably has 3-4 cards left. So that's got to be a scary feeling.
Yeah, it definitely is difficult. I guess the one, well, if the creatures weren't on the board, I was gonna say the one thing that's nice if Will doesn't have a lot of mana, then you don't get in a spot where you can wait and he's able to deploy a bunch of spells at end of turn because he's bottlenecked on the mana. But Brian's got to worry about the creatures first. So, because I don't think we'll get to that point where Brian's just going to be at a super low life total and it doesn't really matter. So,
I think Brian, with that impulse, he's looking for white source Swords to Plowshares, hopefully for Jackal Pup or / Ball Lightning potentially the next turn.
Yeah, and one thing to note, like Mistress Factory usually does a pretty good job of getting in the way of creatures, but because the red deck just has so many removal spells, it is a big risk to activate that thing. So.
At some point, you're going to have to take that risk, though. You know, you are going to have to take that risk. Yeah. Well, there's one less bolt. I mean, because every burn spell that goes to your creatures doesn't go to your face, but, you know, could mean things are getting in. But, yeah, you are going to have to take that risk. Oh, no white source again. So no swords, but that it could be a 4/4 blocker. And that matters because that's a little bit harder to deal with than 3. It will take a couple resources for Will to handle that now, as opposed to just 1.
Right, I'm glad there's a life counter on on screen. I think the last match that I covered, we didn't have a visible one, and I kept losing track. But here, the life total of the opponent is much more relevant in this matchup. So,
yeah,
good thing that Will has a nice clear way to display it. So
Yeah, I think you have what, two combo decks basically, just like going by each other and just do their thing in
yeah, one
big
was a control
big
deck, and the
spots.
other one like was the Welder survival list. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
it was just at some point they kind of just had an overwhelming board presence. I don't think it ever any of the games actually went to actual damage. Maybe one of them did.
Oh,
A
we had
lot
to
of times.
pass the turn by Will. Will passed the turn. No land drop. No extra spells. So we're all of a sudden, Brian. I mean, I'm not saying he's stabilized, but he's got 4 mana now to Will's 2,
Yeah,
and he was obviously scared enough because that he didn't attack the creatures.
yeah. I was gonna say like it's kind of tipping your hand a little that if you're not able to like attack into that board, kind of saying like
Yeah.
I don't have a super strong hand. So I I don't. I'm trying to think like at what point do you can you make a risk? I mean, like, because obviously if you block the Mogg Fanatic, it's not that bad. You still get a damage on the way out, but
Hmm.
it might just be worth the bluff or just that like extra 2 points of damage that you get in or something.
So do we think his hand is full of the 3 drops?
I mean, it
Like
could be a lot of things. It could be Reckless Abandon. It
Fireblast,
could be Sulfuric
Fireblast.
Vortex. Could be Fireblast. Could be. I mean, it could be like cards like Lightning Bolt and whatnot. But I guess
Hmm.
if it were a burn spell, I think you're probably attacking there, right?
What do you think of the split?
Okay, so the Fact or Fiction we have Counterspell Wrath versus Flooded Strand Decree.
Hmm.
Well, the interesting spot here, like since Will stopped attacking, is like I don't know if that makes. Well, first of all, I don't know if Brian would be able to cast Wrath of God. I guess that's first step. I think I'm taking lands
Agreed.
to create justice.
I think I am too. I think I want to hit my land drops, and now I have a whole bunch of blockers. I know that those lands will deal you damage, and that kind of sucks. But like, you are gonna have to like get to your double white, and hopefully in a second second blue that's not painful. With the Adarkar Waste. Oh, he took. Okay, he
The Wrath and
took those.
Counterspell.
Obviously, we don't know. Obviously, we don't know his hand, and I'm sure the counterspell was probably more interesting than the wrath there, because the Mistress Factories are doing a good job of holding things
Well,
back.
when Brian was tapped out, Will took the opportunity to cast 2 lightning bolts. So life total has been halved.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's a 6, not a 9, or
No, that's a 9 because he did it last turn.
oh, okay.
He did another. He did another one the turn before too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that should be a 9 to 19 now. All right, now he's rolling with his homies. Oh, just 2.
Just the Mogg Fanatics. Those ones, they're a little more fearless than the Jackal Pup.
I think if you're Brian, I think I think you can probably risk a Mistress Factory here. Yeah,
I mean, the hesitation with the attack from Will makes it just seem like you're just trying to get in like little points of damage.
which is what he needs right now because
It,
he's close to the burn spell. Oh, he's got 4 cards. Wow,
it
that's a
could
lot.
be a bluff. I don't know by that Will is kind of trying to entice Brian to activating and blocking, but I think I would.
Mm-hmm. I would too, and I'd probably tap the other. I want to keep counterspell up, and I'd probably use the other factory to animate because I think a 3/3 factory might be enough. Even if you block the pup and then he like sacks the 2 fanatics to get it on this, the pump of the factory on the stack, like you've still taken away. You basically save yourself 4 life there. So I think it might be worth it.
Do
But
you
we're
think
definitely
you
in the tank right
automatically
now.
just block the pup here, or is there any merit of just like activating both Mistress Factory and blocking the Mogg Fanatic?
I think I'd want to have that counter spell up because he has so many like burnt spells are probably in hand, is what I think. And I think I don't know, tough call. I don't think I would activate both factories. I think I would just keep one because I want to keep counter spell up. For a reckless abandon, for a fire blast, for a, you know, whatever it is. It could also be just land sulfuric vortex. It could be whatever.
I guess I
So
mean if you're at this point of the game and you're saying I'm going to leave up like blue, then you're never tapping out. Then you're always going to leave up that 2 mana. If you're like right, like I mean because it's not going to get any
yeah,
easier. Uh, and I don't know if that's like possible. Like there might be a point where you just need to cycle a decree for fully or cast a Fact or Fiction or something, or and not get it. So I don't know. Like,
Okay, so it looked like he blocked the factory, by the way. Or blocked the fanatic.
Mogg Fanatic. Okay.
Yeah. Lavamancer. Interesting. Very creature heavy hand. Oh, 5 life is tough. And Brian has no life gain, right? There's no like absorb or anything like that.
I don't know if there's one copy of Absorb. I'm not sure. I don't think there is.
Think so.
That was, I think, David's deck that had one, but well, it's interesting here. Like, if you're not countering this Lavamancer, like, how are you winning, right?
I mean, then you're like, because now he's down to 5, and now he's scared of Fireblast, right? Because if he counters this Lavamancer, he's dead.
I mean, I guess you could say I need to draw Wrath of God, anyways.
Well, he has Wrath of God. He needs
Oh, yeah,
to draw.
yeah.
He needs to draw a unpainful white source, ideally, and then still hold up Counterspell next turn.
Yeah, that
like a second, like that would be what I would go. That's what you're kind of hoping for, because you could, like right now the Lavamancer is not any more damage if you can Wrath next turn. But it is something to think about. I assume we're in the tank to still deciding if this Lavamancer resolves.
I mean, I think the only way you're winning if you're Brian is if you're casting Wrath of God anyways, right? This next turn.
Yes.
So I don't think you counter it.
Ooh.
He's impulse.
Okay, impulse. All right. I mean, this could just be at this point. This could just be like third lightning bolt, Fireblast dead, or
Well,
any other burn spell with Fireblast dead.
Just Fireblast is enough because there's a Mogg Fanatic. So
right.
So here's a bolt.
Third lightning bolt.
That's gonna go down to 2 if it resolves.
Effectively at 1.
Force Spike would be the only card. Yep.
Right. This is the razor's edge right here. I think we kind of saw some of those, but I didn't really catch them.
Yeah, I think the first one was just a land is all I saw. So.
Okay.
But
either way, this is not a good situation for Brian. You know, he's way too low. His opponent still has 2 cards. He's effectively at 1 life. Like, this is...
Yeah, I mean, Will would need to not draw like any burn spells for the next 5 turns. So
yeah, no burn spells, and he needs painless ways to add to cast spells, which is gonna be tough. I feel like I haven't watched this matchup in a long time because I haven't seen much blue-white like Landstill in a very long time. I feel like, but it is really it seems very rough for the white-blue deck, especially on the draw. Like, and I really think Will's had a pretty good hand, just because he's got exactly 2 lands, and so everything else is gas. We think unless those are both the 3 drops in his hand or something. But right. Oh, okay. Fireblast, then you're still dead. Yep, there we go. Moving on.
Was that a slow roll, or did he draw that the next? No, because he was still tapped out. So
Will did that 3 times, like where he let him resolve the impulse, which he could have just. I feel like.
I mean, you would want to do it in response to the impulse, right? Because in theory,
that's what I think.
Even if he had a Force Spike, he would take a damage.
Oh, right, especially there. But I'm saying there was other times where he waited until the opponent resolved when he resolved the Fact or Fiction, or he resolved the impulse at the end of turn to cast his end of turn burn spell, which is interesting. I mean, I wouldn't want them to have more things in hand, the counter or what have you. But as we go to sideboards, I think this is hopefully, I would think, improves quite a bit for Brian.
There are
3 Bevs is huge.
I'll just go through the sideboard real quick. There's 2 copies of Annul, 3 copies of Blue Elemental Blast. I think that's 2 Teferi's Response, 2 Phyrexian Furnace, 2 Powder Keg, 3 Meddling Mage, and a Disenchant. So I mean, it's really the most appealing card. Obviously, Blue Elemental Blast is great. I don't know.
Keg,
I don't know if Powder Keg is enough.
He has a lot of. He has more 1-drops. He has more 1-drops. He's got those extra like cadets or whatever, you know.
Yeah, but like it's only like the powder keg needs to come down pretty early. Like it's not great on turn 6.
No, it's not.
I mean, it
But
might trade
like,
1-for-1 at that point.
I mean, it's probably better than Wrath of God.
That's
Is it?
fair.
I don't know. I mean, Wrath's pretty
Yeah.
slow too. Humility might still stay in because it turns off, Ball Lightning and the sacks of and the Lavamancer activations. Route's way too slow. Route's got to go.
Yeah.
Force Spike, I think, kind of hangs out, and I maybe you keep.
I think you're keeping Force Spike just because I mean, like I think Disenchants are probably worse.
Well, Dismantling Blow definitely is too slow, so you need to get rid of that.
I don't like Humility. I think it's too slow here. I would take
it. Probably is too. Yeah, you could even try to shave a land. I don't know.
I mean, like I think like Meddling Image might be better than like Disenchant, just as like a 2/2 body.
I think he's going to have some way to deal with Vortex because if Vortex hits, he's just and Curse Scroll too are just such repeatable sources of damage. It could be pretty rough, but I hear you. Like they're situational, right? Like they're like you keep 2 in to deal with 4 cards, but like those cards are really good against you. Like it's hard to say. It doesn't help this. It doesn't help the quick starts. It helps the slow starts of Will. So maybe like it's a play draw thing. Like you move them in when you're on the play so that you have a little more time to react.
Right.
I
was just gonna bring up Will's list. So
yeah, go ahead.
His sideboard, he has 2 Flaring Pain, 2 Red Elemental Blast, 2 Pyroblast, 4 Pyrokinesis, 3 Crash,
3
and
Crash.
2 Meltdown. I think I'm just bringing in all 4 Blasts.
For what?
Pyroblast and 2 Red Elemental. I'm probably taking out Ball Lightning. I'm guessing that's what Will's starting with Ball Lightning. I know he hasn't been very high on that card. So 2 Ball Lightning and Incinerate.
I honestly don't think he needs to change much. I would almost consider not changing anything. The Red Elemental Blast and the Pyroblast don't deal damage, and so yeah, and they basically counter a counterspell or a Fact of Fiction, which is I can understand. But maybe bring in 2 at most. And I hear you. Like maybe your worst card is probably Incinerate as far as damage per card per mana value. But I'm not sure. I don't know. Or maybe Reckless Abandon just because it's a 2-for-1. I
think the way that will approach this match is, and I don't think that game was necessarily representative of how he thinks most of the close games will happen, is you get to a point where you're playing like draw go, and you're trying to set up a spot where you're going to pick a fight. And if you have cards like Ball Lightning or Reckless Abandon or even Sulfuric Vortex, those are not good cards to like try and pick a fight because they're expensive and they're sorcery speed. And so I think he wants to operate at instant speed so that he can go end a turn. I'm going to try and deploy all these spells and try and win the game there. So I think that's kind of the theory that he's probably going to play to, and I think that's probably why he's going to take out a card like Ball Lightning in this matchup.
I can see that. Okay. So Brian's making a decision about his mulligan right now. I do really like his playmat, a classic Shivan Dragon, which I actually have that same art print on my wall right next to me right now, which is pretty awesome. Also, I think that bird's playmat's pretty sharp too, huh?
It looks real good like that, and the stitched.
I love the stitched borders.
Yeah,
they look great.
It
really makes it pop. It makes it pop.
Yep.
All right, pup go. But okay, playing a factory in turn 1's good. You get the blocker, get it's summoning sickness out of the way. And yeah, I'm sure he's happy to see planes right now. And I'm assuming also a Source of Plowshares is probably hopefully in his hand. But he's got 7 cards, which is huge because last time he only started with 6.
Okay.
He being Brian. But I think this is already way better and be on the play. Way better start for Brian already.
I guess the pup's gonna get in. Oh well. I mean, I would. It would be very bold, I think, for Brian to activate that factory in the spot. So
yeah. I don't think he can fall behind in mana, but it's clear he doesn't have the swords yet either. Okay. So turn 3. What are we going for here? Brian needs to start interacting, though. He has mana leaks, right? He's got 3 mana leaks and a prohibit, I think.
Yeah,
For 2 mana counters.
I'm not exactly sure on the counter suite, but it's usually 3 or 4 mana leaks is pretty standard. So no blue mana coming from Brian. So
okay,
that could be punishing, I guess, as the turns go by. There's no real reason to have like double white in the spot, right?
I wouldn't think so.
No, because if you would have had a swords,
except for literally Wrath
right away. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless he's trying to keep it for ball lightning. But again, with only 2, like you said, it's less of a concern. If there's 4, maybe it'd be a different story.
Yeah.
But Will cracking his fetch land now means he probably has his 3rd land already. He doesn't have to worry about trying to get it, so he wants to probably thin just a bit. I know their statistics are low, but it does matter overall. Sure. And especially with the red deck, they're in there to be in the graveyard. And there you go, to feed Barbarian Ring. Okay, now I think you can try to... Now it looks like he's going to try to block. Let's see. He manned it up. Going for a shock.
So
pump it. Save it.
But Will does have the option to use the Mogg Fanatic to get rid of it, right?
Yep. That's fine. Oh, that's RFG'd. Will.
Pup does get plowed.
Okay. And post combat is he? There we go. Yeah, you need that. That makes a difference there. All right. So honestly,
damage from that attack is real good for Brian.
Well, and also he basically, Will lost a resource to basically just save his pup, which that ended up going. I mean, he won for one that way, but like he wasted a shock, to try to just save his pup, which would have been good overall. I agree, but it was just interesting.
All right, we'll take a damage to cast Vector Fiction.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. There, yep. That I was going to say. That's what he probably wants them there for.
Oh, I mean, like that's the best exchange. I mean, like in terms of mana and whatnot. So
4 first 1. Yeah.
Right. I mean, on the bright side of things is like the amount of recurring damage coming from Will is not nearly as fast as it was in the first game. The mana's currently looks a little awkward though. That Coastal Tower does a lot of work there. I think for Brian, we do see a Powder Keg, so Powder Keg will not destroy enchantments, as many people do think. It's not the
everyone forgets it.
Ratchet Bomb, so it won't get rid of that Seal of Fire. Just will get rid of that.
Is Ratchet Bomb non-land permanent? Is that what it is? Is that the difference?
So.
Yeah. I probably don't risk my Mistress Factory knowing I have Powder Keg here, but he's gonna go for it. He's got the seal. Yeah, okay. I mean, you still do the same trick. If he wants to try to seal it, fine. Oh, wow. Okay, 1 damage. I think Brian will take that exchange. Okay. Seems like a weird way to tap.
Vortex
it might not matter.
Is coming down. So if this stays in play, then I mean it's basically like an unblockable Jackal Pup kind of thing that's just going to get in every turn.
Yep.
So, Missy Mountain Game says, "I love the enchantment pile. Just all my enchantments just go here. They do different things, but they all just go here.
They're very different things."
It's kind of interesting here that we got rid of the Mogg Fanatic, but now this Powder Keg doesn't really have much to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree. I think it was probably still worth him trying to just block to save another life, which is what he did. He basically got it for free. So now he has the Powder Keg. So now any further pups or Lavamancers are not doing a whole lot.
Yeah.
But Brian needs an answer to this Sulfuric Vortex in a hurry, because now it's just all burn spells going.
Yeah, he does not do a good job of pressuring life total, so he can't really race it. So,
I mean, should he have attacked with that Mistress Factory maybe to try to put some pressure on? He's not going to be as good as the red deck, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, he had nothing else to do. Like, what's the? I mean, he's so reactive, but he has to have a way to deal with it. Maybe he does, and he was tapped out last turn, so he couldn't prevent the 2 damage from before.
There are 5 cards currently in Will's graveyard, so that is pretty relevant because of Barbarian Ring.
Very relevant.
And one thing that is really good against counter magic is because that one's already in play, you're not going to be able to counter that one. So you know that those last 2 points are going to get through.
I mean, he basically just hit threshold right now with the 2 Seal of Fires.
Okay.
So that I mean, poor Brian's effectively at 3 life, and that goes down by 2 every turn every upkeep he gets. So I mean, this is not long for the world. I don't think Brian needs, like I said, he needed an answer to Sulfuric Vortex a while ago.
I mean, he's getting aggressive with Mistress Factory, which I think is probably like his only way of maybe sneaking this out if the Sulfuric Vortex is staying in play. But there are not many turns left, I would guess, in Brian's future. So
maybe 1. Yep, Brian, you're basically at 1 life. Brian needs to have literally, I don't know,
Disenchant,
remove. I mean, not that. All right, now here comes the white burn spell for 9.
Is there a redirect type effect, misdirection? I guess those are all abilities, aren't spells here. Here's a lightning bolt. That's just I mean, something that I think every single spell. I mean, actually, as long as now we have threshold, I think there's just too much damage.
There's nothing.
There's 2 Seal of Fires, a Sulfuric Vortex trigger, and a Barbarian Ring. So I don't even think there's anything else that Will needs. I mean, the life totals are tied right now. We'll note that. Not gonna be for very long. But...
Brian's essentially a -1.
Yep.
I mean, he needs the. Okay. It's bye-bye.
Incinerate.
Yeah. I remember when Rich Shea first got into like Premodern a little while ago, he kept saying how bad like the matchup was for the red deck versus or for the blue-white deck. And this is just showing it. Like there's just too many. There's just too much to do.
Yeah, if you line up things, then like it is very difficult. If blue-white can keep that initial pressure off, but like it's difficult because all the cards just cost 1 that year. There, some of them are just going to slip under your counter magic, so there is not much you can do.
Ta-da!
But yeah, so a pretty clean win from Will there. All the burn spells just picked away at Brian, and we see Will with his reckless Sligh beating Brian Selden with the Landstill. So
yeah, I think we went that how it was supposed to, and the was it the red blast on the Factor Fiction just didn't let Brian get ahead at all, and I thought that was well timed. Like you said, that's why they're in there, is exactly to counter that spell. But yeah, I think that went the way we expected, and I don't think there's anything Brian could have done differently, honestly.
Yeah, Mike Arnold had noted, he said that like Brian didn't really have a sideboard that's geared towards red. I think a lot of people do kind of gear it, and I mean he had 3 red elemental blast, or blue elemental blast, but a lot of times you see chills or warmths or sickle protection reds. There's certainly a lot of sideboard cards that the blue white deck can have if they're expecting the red matchup, but didn't see them as much in Brian's matchup, and it hurt him here. So
yeah, he needed a lot. He needed to pay a lot more attention to it if he was going to try to fight it. So
all right, we're jumping down to the players. Let's see if we can listen in and get some insight from them.
But that makes sense, and you definitely got me with the what was it? The pump it into just swordsing my pup. I was not thinking even ahead of that, so that was really cool to see.
All right, we have to unmute these guys.
Absolutely.
Hello, guys. Can you hear us now?
Yep.
There we go.
Hello.
Hey there.
All right. So was a beating that was administered.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, yeah, honestly, I think this matchup's a lot closer than that shows, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the red deck in general usually has an advantage, but yeah, I would agree that there are a lot of games that can be a lot closer. But I mean, there's just certain times when if you have the initial pressure, the recurring source of damage, that makes just if you're just able to chip in with a Jackal Pup a few times, it's just so good against the blue
Right.
deck.
In
Yeah.
game one, I had the force spike, but if I think the game one, the complexion of that game changes if I'm on the play versus the draw.
Sure,
Huge difference.
if you're able
That
to
pup
force
did at
spike a
least
Jackal
6.
Pup, yeah.
Yeah, and nailing that pup with a force spike and then following up with a factory to try to deter attacks would have been huge, but so be it.
Big difference.
He had the higher seed.
Force spike is such a, we were talking a little bit before, an interesting card. I think it's underplayed. It's one of those cards I'm scared of, but I don't think I can actually play around it in most cases. I just kind of got to run right into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to lose more equity by playing around it, I think. So.
Yeah.
And I definitely cheated my sideboard against the red decks this month.
Yeah, someone had just commented at the very end of the matchup that like a lot of
wasn't
blue-white
expecting
lists,
a lot
you
of
see a lot of cards, and you kind of don't have as many. So
Yeah, right. I mean, obviously this control deck wants a 50-card sideboard, but
Yeah.
it would be really good if you did.
sure.
But yeah, I definitely cheated. No cop reds, only 3 Hydroblasts. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
Right.
That was a
Definitely.
beating. And then my mana was funky the third game or second game.
Yeah, that was unfortunate on that end. I mean, I guess being able to, in theory, I probably should have played that Sulfuric Vortex a turn earlier. I would think I was getting cute there, but it definitely makes it a lot easier when you're not worried about a counterspell. Because I think you drew the Adarkar Wastes the turn before I played the Vortex. So I was like, oh man, I missed my opportunity.
Yeah.
Darn it.
Yeah.
Brian, did you keep in disenchants for like Sulfur Vortex Curse Scroll?
I kept 2.
Yeah,
I shaved the Dismantling Blow.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
But I kept the disenchants in. Figured I could find them if I needed them, and which was wrong. I couldn't find them. I mean, I thought about annuls, but I think that's just a little too targeted and too.
Yeah.
I mean, it gets the seals, I guess, too. Maybe that's a tiebreaker. But
Yeah, good point.
it just felt a little weak. But maybe a card that conditionally can trade 1 for 1 for 1 mana is something that the deck needs.
Yeah.
Because it can get behind so quickly.
I could see that. It's not the best, but it's also hitting essentially the 2 cards you're really scared about that are permanent, the Vortex and the Curse Scroll. I don't know. I can see an argument for it.
Sure.
So when I was testing this, it was interesting. See if I can find it. The consensus was like, if I don't have a 1-drop in game 1, but especially in game 2, it feels almost unwinnable. Like if I just go Mountain Go against any sort of solid blue-white hand, it's almost like a non-game because they can just catch up. There's no pressure. And I was wondering, with your experience, if you kind of felt that same way. It's like 1-drop or bust.
I'd be honest. I just picked up Control 2 months ago because
Fair enough.
I am not a control player, and I just picked it up to try to hone those skills a bit. The times I have played this red deck seems, even my son who's 9 years old, it does feel unwinnable in some ways just because the game goes so long, and every card you see is worth 2 points of damage, right? On average, or maybe a little bit less, but there is a momentum for sure on this, right? You get ahead, stay ahead. I can clear the board. They get a decent degree of justice to get blockers. Then I'm really only scared of you pulling a handful of your 1 mana, Reckless Abandons and bolts
Right.
and things to pull the game off.
Yeah.
But I mean, even against you, like even tap out card draws, pretty scary.
Yeah.
And still, I was unclear whether I should keep that in or not because it's probably good, but I mean, it takes a specific board state for it to be good.
Sure. I saw that, in a couple of ways. I think it's good. The way I win, I was just really honing in on this day when I was playing a little bit, was the Standstill is good because it draws you into, obviously, the more 1/1 counters with counterspells. So Red Blast, unless I'm pushing through a last Fireblast, should be reserved for the Fax and a Standstill if I can get it to prevent the ability to draw into those. So I think Standstill is important in the matchup. It can just be awkward when you have like a Standstill hand and like no man land. Then it's just kind of like I just get to stockpile burning lands, which is not good.
Yep, agreed.
So it's weird, but I think it is good in the matchup. It just sometimes when it's bad, it's really bad. Just like Ball Lightning, like it's really good when it's really good, but when it's bad, it just feels awful.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you guys see anything of knowing the matchup you wanted to ask about?
Not really.
I mean, it was pretty straightforward, but I can't think of really anything.
Okay. I think Flint with his monthly win and playing this deck now, Cadets is obviously wrong. I just, truth be told, didn't have Goblin Patrols, so in went the Cadets, and I was too lazy to get Patrols. But I think this version is almost where I want it in the current metagame right now. It hasn't completely solved a parfait matchup, but it sure makes them have to fight a hell of a lot harder. Which means essentially if they stumble, then you usually win, so they just can't stumble anymore. But I've enjoyed the deck, and I've really enjoyed that there are 2 blue-white decks in the top 8 too. I think that deck truly is in a great spot right now because it has great game against parfait a lot of times, in my opinion, and just across the field. So it's happy to see that deck making a resurgence as well.
Yeah, the Oath matchup, even the Tax Rack. I mean, I've gotten crushed by them when they have the good draws, but on average, I think it's the blue-white deck is kind of advantage. There's just so many dead cards, and you have to fight over Scroll Rack because you can let them Tax Rack all day long, and they're just discarding their lands because they're not laying them out really either. So
right.
So
there's so few cards you actually have to fight in that matchup.
Right. Like the same black-blue one is probably a nightmare because they can get the they can get the Scroll Rack down with the protection, but
yeah,
I think the standard kind of Scroll Rack, Tax Rack deck, Oath Landstill is pretty good against.
Yeah, I like that your build moved away from the seals to the disenchants.
Yeah,
I think Seal is great when it's like the Parallax Tide versions.
Agreed. Yep.
But like in straight Standstill, Disenchant is 100 times better.
Because he doesn't want to tap out.
Right?
Yeah, you want to play on their turn.
Well, the only awkward part about it, and part of the reason I shaved down to 2 Standstills in my list, is there's not many things you can do to get cards out of your hand. So a turn 2 Standstill to them cracking it, you don't want to lead that to discarding a card.
Yeah, that's fair.
Steel is a bad play, but it's something that is a play that you can do. But I agree. I like seals just give a deck with others. It just cancels out another seal where Disenchants actually gets the thing you want to get.
Right.
Right. You can let someone rack once and then you can nab it with the Disenchant. But seals just kill other seals. And another reason that Landstill is good is there's so much virtual card advantage that's happening.
Right.
And why this matchup is hard is that you have no dead cards in your deck. Where
that's true.
I played against a black white deck,
Uh-huh.
and like they left the swords in against me, Swords to Plowshares against the Landstill deck because they were hoping to get a factory or something. But they just didn't have enough cards to take out of their deck.
Right.
Cards in their sideboard. So there's a lot of virtual card advantage going on in Landstill that makes it, because everyone's kind of shooting for tax rack still. So
Mhm.
a null is kind of dead in the sideboard, and people are going 3 to 4 of those as well. So there's a lot of virtual card advantage both in the main board and a lot of dead cards against that can't be brought in against Landstill compared to other tax rack decks.
How did you find Route? I had not seen that card in a while.
Yeah, the first month that I played this in, I kind of had a different take on it. More of a I was trying to like blend kind of the tide and blue white control, and then Meddling the Mage on Wrath of God really got me. So I thought maybe I saw some people kind of hybridize their wraths to protect against Meddling Mage.
Yeah.
I think on average it's probably the wrong move because that doesn't come up that often, and the 7 mana instant speed wrath is rare, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's a lot of mana. 7 mana is a lot.
Yeah, I'd rather be making four dudes.
Ain't that the truth? Yeah, I mean, the match for Onset Springs, the match went how it could be. I mean, I just was the beneficiary of some good luck on at least game 2 with the lands kind of not arranging themselves well, I think, and sometimes that happens, I guess.
Yep.
But otherwise, I always find it a fun match to play.
Yeah. There's a lot of tension in this game to, for the like I want to end the game quick because I don't want you to have as many cards.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think it's a challenging matchup for sure.
I agree.
Cool.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you for the insight, guys. Congratulations on both getting this far. Job well done to both of you. But Ryan, is there anything you want to say as we won't be seeing you in the rest of this top 8? Will you have another opportunity if it comes to it? So is there anything you want to say, Brian?
No, thanks, Mike, for kind of sharing this tournament, and I look forward to seeing you all in LobsterCon.
Yeah, that'll be fun. So it's not too far
Coming
away.
up soon.
So
Yeah, it's very soon.
I just picked up the LobsterCon stamps today. Ready to get stamping.
all right. Jared's got more work to do tonight. So
I do.
all right, players. With that, we'll let you go, and Jared and I are going to wrap things up.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
See you later.
All right. So, I guess in summary, Will is continuing his hot streak. Now he's got Flint's technology in his corner, so he's looking good. I think he is playing the winner of our other match that we are looking to play next Tuesday. That is between Mike Arnold and it is, I can't remember the player's name.
The Goblins List of Birds of Paradise.
Yes,
that's all I remember.
Yes. I apologize for not remembering who it was. So that is a match that we're going to see. I know Mike Arnold was in the chat, and he was not hoping for the red deck to win since he's not looking forward to either of his potential red deck matchups. So we'll see how that goes for him. So we have one more quarterfinals match, and then we'll be continuing on with our semifinals. I'll try and keep everyone posted on when we are expected to stream those, as that's what I plan on doing. But we have still some more top 8 for the Spring Fling to do. But I want to thank Jared for jumping in the booth with me, getting to see some classic Magic. Unfortunately, it was a little bit quick. Maybe we would have liked a little bit more Magic, but it still was interesting or good to hear your insight. So
yeah, we did what we could with it. That's for sure.
All right. With that, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. But until next time, take care.
Have a good one, guys.